my Yellowstone Dutton Ranch coffee cup that my son Andrew got me for Christmas, everybody. No, I'm not plugging it. I just want to pretend I'm one of these Montana ranchers. And John Dutton is walking across the field and he sees me and he starts to run toward me. And then I start to run toward him, and John Dutton, i.e. Kevin Costner, he throws his hands out high and he embraces me with the love of Montana, all the horses and the lassos and the everything that goes on Yellowstone. Good morning, everyone. KJ here. Yes, I got my Yellowstone Dutton Ranch cup. Last night on Difficult Research, old Fancy Nancy was talking about she had gotten her a kind of cute cup. I think it's a Got the Bitch cup from Krisha K. Easton's Difficult Research Merc shop there. And I thought, well, you know, let's talk about it. Well, I'll tell you this, y'all. I will say this. Kevin Costner was on the Golden Globes last night. I didn't watch the Golden Globes, but when I was scrolling through the news feed this morning, I saw a picture of him. And, I got to remind myself, you don't look upon people to lust after them in their heart. You might as well be committing adultery if you do so and all that. But give me a break, y'all. I'm a human being, and Kevin Costner's an excellent actor. He's very, very attractive. He's single, which, by the way, y'all, this whole little cute thing I did during Christmas with Mr. Wayne there, folks, there's only one man for me, and that's Mr. Wayne, but it was a lot of fun anyway. Good morning, Norma Guerrera, Fancy Nancy, Teresa, Nettie, Mark McGarry, good morning, Kathy Barella, Susan Honecker, 1979 ACR, Bonnie Shaw, Philly, NF Mom, I Live for Now, Stephanie Willow, Beach Lady, good morning all of y'all. How are y'all doing? It's Monday again. And, last night, as a lot of us were joining Krisha K. Easton of Difficult Research, we were going over a few things, and I highly recommend, if y'all didn't catch last night's live stream, go back and watch it. If you wasn't able to get there, it's a good one. We were discussing, actually discussing a lot of different things, but one thing in particular, which I hate when I really want to talk about it, but I'm relegated to the comments there. I tried to give my little 2 cents worth in there about this stipulation to seal subpoenas. And, I brought out that one word of formality and all of that. But I really wanted to go into that very quickly, and then we'll move on. Hello, Kathy Gregg. Hello, Long Gray Mare, Chris Arnett. Kathy Barella, Happy New Year to you. Vix Tex, Happy New Year. So, the first thing I was thinking when I saw that, because Donna Donald had originally brought it up the last live stream, and I had no idea what it was about. All I could do was speculate, right? So I told her I'd have to think on it, and so I've had a little time. It's a very simple legal document, a stipulation, which means the state and the defense, they both agree on this. And I thought, well, this is formality. This is just something they have to have in the case file, right? But then I looked at it, and it kind of clued me in on what it was about, because initially I was like, okay, subpoenas. Who's going to be subpoenaed? We know the state's witnesses will be subpoenaed. If the defense, John Pryor, has witnesses, they'll be subpoenaed. And even if they want to come and testify, they still have to be legally subpoenaed, right? So I thought maybe that's what that's all about. And they just don't want it out in the public realm. And then I thought, well, maybe it's about, subpoenas being issued of experts of John Pryor, who doesn't want their name out there. This is all about, a fair trial, yada, yada, yada. But then I got to looking at it, and it says in here, which kind of clued me in on it all, y'all. It says Idaho Criminal Rules 17A allows for the issuance of what? Blank subpoenas to be filled in by the party requesting it prior to service. So yes, it is a formality, but they're blank. There isn't no one specific that they're talking about. We can put that off to the side. This isn't nobody they're trying to keep private. This is a blank subpoena. In other words, leading up to Chad's trial April 1st, if they do have to subpoena anyone, they have the blank subpoenas ready. There is no, the judge and the state and the defense saying, okay, this is who this is. This is to let both parties know that these are blank subpoenas. No one on either side knows who they might fill in the blank there. But regardless of who they fill in the blank there of a subpoena, it has to stay sealed. So maybe that's not as sensational as we would have all. I mean, I could have come up with all kinds of reasons and people that could have been subpoenaed. But again, it does say the issuance of a blank subpoena. So basically what that means is they know, and I'm sure it goes on all the time, that during this whole pre-trial stuff and getting everyone together, first and foremost, I believe the state and the defense knows ultimately who's going to be subpoenaed. But then again, there might be somebody last minute that John Pryor needs to throw in the kitty there. They've got those blank subpoenas, and they're just basically saying, according to the codes and statutes, you've got these blank subpoenas, so we're going to keep whoever, all this stuff. But then again, y'all, look at the case file in Lori's case and in Chad's case. Do you see anything in there that says, we are subpoenaing this person? No. So it just basically is formality. It isn't anything further than, other than to say the controversy would be is who, who could John Pryor fill in the blank on, or the state fill in the blank on, right? Good morning, Cindy Arnold. Sealed until when they testify. Fancy Nancy, obviously we knew, if you can go back to Lori's trial, we didn't really know who all was going to testify, but we all thought, well, some of these people are because of what? Chad's preliminary hearing. So we were able to kind of nail that down, but we didn't really know. Obviously, that's part of the legality of it all, in that they're really not supposed to let everyone know. But we've got a heads up because we saw what went on at Lori's trial. So we have an idea of who is going to testify. But then again, there might be other people that we don't know nothing about that are going to be subpoenaed. And obviously that's common sense. You're not going to show your hand to the public. You got to keep the integrity of the case together, in order to, to lay out your case state or lay out your defense, John Pryor, right? So yes, when they testify, you're going to obviously know every person that goes on the stand. This is common sense. Every person that goes on the stand who was in Lori's trial or who'll be in Chad's trial, they've been subpoenaed. And under the administrative rules there in Idaho, they don't want people to know who that is. But we got a good idea now, don't we? Hello, Bama Cat. Good morning, wise old lady. You still need to find the person to subpoena them. Maybe all these people have moved and John can't find them. Well, that's a possibility, Kathy Barella. But then again, the question really is why are they doing this stipulation over blank subpoenas? They're not doing it over, we need to seal these subpoenas that have people's names attached to them. So ultimately, generally speaking, if they want to subpoena someone, yes, they have to find them. But, you know, who would John Pryor want to find that he can't find? Well, this could go back to the little cockroaches of these wigged out, freaked out people that go under rocks and hide in a cleft of a rock and all this bullshit. The bottom line is these are about blank subpoenas. And I'm sure they will be filled in by John Pryor, more so than the state. Although I will say the state will probably have a couple of witnesses in there narrowed in and laser focused on this whole idea of Chad Daybell that we don't know anything about. I mean, did Chad's in-laws go on the stand? Did Chad's kids go on the stand, right? We don't know what's going to happen with that. We don't know if Emma or Garth or any of the rest of those children are going to have to go on the stand. And if so, if they go on the stand, are they going on the stand for the state or the defense? We all know this whole deal with Melanie Pulaski being a hostile witness. Who knows? But you're right, Kathy Barella. Sometimes they have to find these people. Donna Donald says, I am sure the surprises will be more nails in Chad's favorite wood box. Good morning, Jennifer Cheney. Good morning, Ramona Fisley. Donna Donald says, Melanie may be mad at Chad by now. Well, why would she? Are we talking about Melanie Niece? Lori sure didn't throw Chad under the bus. For all we know, Melanie Pulaski still thinks Chad's the king of the 144,000. And that her Aunt Lori is being persecuted. She is a translated being. She's so exalted. And she's being put in a man-made prison under man's law. But this is all about persecution. Good morning, Cindy Bullock. So that gets that out of the way. And, you know, I feel very confident when it, you know, because again, you got to look, you got to read between the lines, but even if you didn't, it says right there, blank subpoenas. So it's not geared toward a particular person. And I'm sure, I mean, at this point, unless the state came across some new evidence, I would think that they would have the same witnesses, right? But this could be about John Pryor, y'all. I mean, it would have to be. Good morning, Ann Gibson. Good morning, Jewel Box News. Yes, you're right, Jewel Box News. Melanie Pulaski is delusional, along with the rest of them. They're all living in a fantasy world. Well, guess what? This is reality. All of them, they can look all they want. That is exactly why I'm going to focus on Melanie Gibb in relation to Chad Daybell and looking at that. I told y'all I'll be doing some pre-records and we'll be discussing some things. Don't forget that Cresha K. Easton of Difficult Research is going with Chad's preliminary hearing along with other evidentiary things and also Lori's trial in order to flesh things out as well. So be sure to visit Cresha K. Easton of Difficult Research. Subscribe to her channel. Catch her lives. You'd be surprised what you can learn. Well, it's lovely to see you, Ann Gibson. Now, let's get to the next thing that I was only into about an hour, maybe a little over an hour of Cresha's live stream last night. And forgive me if she did bring it up. I'll have to go back because I want to go back and finish the rest of it. I was awful tired, y'all. I've been just trying to get into this new year and trying to eat healthy, and I'm starting to take supplements that my doctor, the fish oil and all this other stuff, it's whacked me out. I've been cutting caffeine out in the evening times, so that's really giving me headaches and things of that sort. So as much as I would have liked to have been through the whole live stream last night, I was so tired. But I didn't know if she brought this up. Maybe she did, Donna Donald. I don't know. But I want to get y'all's attention on something I find really, really interesting. Now, as y'all recall, do y'all remember when Lori filed her notice of alibi? Do y'all remember that? Do y'all remember that? And we, let's see, where is it? Yeah, right here. Her notice of alibi. Now, you might be thinking, well, KJ, she's already been adjudicated. She's been found guilty. Everyone's now trying to focus on Arizona. Well, I'm not trying to rehash it. What I am trying to bring across is that when she filed this notice of alibi, it says here, Lori Vallow was in her own apartment in Rexburg, Idaho, when J.J. Vallow and Tylee Ryan died in the apartment of Alex Cox in Rexburg, Idaho, right? And then it had that last sentence in it that said, defendant was with Melanie Gibb, David Warwick, and or Chad Daybell. And remember we talked about this. It's like, well, yeah, she can say that knowing that Melanie Gibb and David Warwick are state's witnesses. She's, I'm not saying she's telling the truth, but she also knows Melanie Gibb and David Warwick can flesh this out about the alibi. And we do know Melanie Gibb and David Warwick were there when? The weekend that JJ was murdered. But it doesn't say anything separate about September 8th and 9th of Tylee Ryan. So the way it reads, it's almost like she's saying she was in her own apartment when Tylee was murdered, and she was in her own apartment when JJ was murdered, and that the defendant was with Melanie Gibb, David Warwick, and her Chad Daybell. But then I thought, well, maybe she's talking about just that weekend of JJ, and she's not including Tylee. And she doesn't give details where that, if she was in her apartment on September 8th and 9th, and we all know the evidence of them coming back from Yellowstone and stuff. The question is, was Melanie Gibb, David Warwick, and Chad Daybell there when they got back from Yellowstone? And I don't believe that's the case. So I am assuming through common sense that she was talking about being with Melanie Gibb, David Warwick, and Chad Daybell during the time of JJ's murder, right? And then, of course, she says that she was in Hawaii when Tammy Daybell was murdered, and that she was with Melanie Boudreaux and Audrey Bartario. And let's just be clear, she was. Did that keep her from getting conspiracy to commit murder, which is the same thing as murder, on her? No, she got it. And with that being said, as the groundwork of where I'm leading, let's look now to Chad Daybell. Okay? We all know January 3rd of 2023. Now stop. That's the beginning of last year. It's weird now. We're in 2024. But the beginning of last year, John Pryor did a notice of service. January 3rd of 2023, the defendant, through his counsel, submitted to the prosecuting attorney by Odyssey Service his notice of alibi. Okay? Remember when Lori went to trial in the middle of 2023. So at the beginning of that year, a notice of alibi was filed. It says further on January 25th. So that's January 3rd, the notice of alibi. Then January 25th, the defendant, through his counsel, submitted by Odyssey Service his disclosure of expert witness report as it relates to the defendant's forensic pathologist. For those that don't know, a forensic pathologist is a practitioner who will analyze the medical history of the deceased individual and crime scene evidence and witness testimonials, perform an autopsy to assess whether death was caused by injury or disease, as well as to collect further evidence from the body. Forensic pathologists are trained in multiple forensic sciences, as well as traditional medicine. Other areas of science that the forensic pathologist must have a working knowledge of is toxicology, firearms examination, wound ballistics, trace evidence, forensic serology, and DNA technology. So in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, the beginning of last year, January 3rd, he turns in his notice of alibi. But at the same, less than a few weeks later, he's also turned in this pathologist, this one that John Pryor got, and I am assuming this had to do mostly with the DNA, right? Where are we going with this? So that was January of last year. Guess what? Comes now John Pryor, counsel for Chad Guy Daybell, and hereby gives notice to this court that on December 27th of 2023, y'all, the end of 2023, the defendant, through his counsel, submitted to the prosecuting attorney by Odyssey Service his amended notice of alibi. And why wouldn't he? Why wouldn't he amend his alibi? Huh? Because now, at the end of the year, he knows good and damn well that Lori's been tried and convicted. And they've got to see all the evidence. So even though we don't know what his alibi is, and don't you find it interesting that Archie would allow people to see in that their filed alibi what her stand was, even though it was little and hardly nothing there, nothing specific, basically. They're not going to allow anyone, John Pryor isn't going to allow anyone to be able to see his alibi. Because I'll tell you this right now, if they were able to file this alibi, which they did at the end of December, and we even got a couple of sentences of where Chad says he was and all of this stuff, people would start picking it apart. And again, this goes back to Lori was in Hawaii, right? She didn't have to be there for to be charged with conspiracy to commit murder, and neither does Chad, no matter what the hell that damn asshole wants to say his alibi is. So what I am saying is these pre-records that we are going to be discussing here this week and some next week is going to relate to Chad's amended alibi and the speculation, the opinions of where he is going to say he was. Let me be clear. Chad Daybell's going to use his children as part of his alibi. You can be damn sure of it. But even if they do, even if Garth and Emma and the rest of them say Dad was here or there or wherever, other than killing the kids and killing our mother, murdering our mother, it don't matter. Lori was in Hawaii and she still got convicted of it. Yes, Liza Joe. Exactly. Chad Daybell is amending his alibi to fit what now John Pryor, who sat on the front row at Lori's trial, they are absolutely, this is pulling a Jodi Arias, basically. Remember y'all, Jodi Arias, she had all that time in jail waiting trial. She got to figure out her stupid way of being able to fit into everything. What she knew was the evidence, make no mistake. Chad Daybell knows exactly. He's got, John Pryor's got a whole transcript of every single word that was ever said. Whether Chad Daybell gets to sit in his jail cell and jack off and read it, I don't know. But I'll tell you this right now, Chad Daybell does not have a meaningful alibi. When you take into totality the fact that the text messages all line up, what the hell's the man gonna do about the raccoon text and still being there at his residence within 12 or 14 minutes of Alex Cox leaving? Oh, he didn't know Alex was there. He wants to put this off on Lori and Alex and that he didn't do anything. Kathy Barilla says they still have his phone, his digital footprint. Good point, Kathy. He's twisted and more twisted, says Norma Guerrera. Fancy Nancy says Chad was probably in his portal. I'll tell you what, Chad Daybell is a serial killer. Chad Daybell, absolutely, y'all, this is my opinion, but I believe it. He absolutely got off on the power trip whenever he created the narrative that led to what? Murdering those children and his own damn wife. He can just wave up, bye-bye. Bye-bye. Maria B says Chad's alibi is he was sitting on the pot in his portal taking a universal dump. I am Chad Daybell. I am sitting on the pot. Ugh! It's got corn and everything. It's all natural. Let's see what. Yes. Exactly. So let's talk about it briefly. Let's talk about that. We already have an example of what Lori wanted to say in her notice of alibi. That she was home and that the children were being murdered over at Alex Cox's. Now, let's stop. Why would she tell the truth, first of all? Right? Would she tell the truth? Would she lie about it? I mean, some of y'all, a lot of y'all, think that Tylee was murdered in Lori's apartment because Alex came in overnight. Why would he come in overnight if she was being murdered over in Alex's apartment, right? Perhaps, these are just hypotheses. Alex did the deed over in his apartment, went over there late to Lori to talk to her, to plan the next thing. Who knows? I mean, why does he have to go to Lori's overnight when he's not usually going to Lori's overnight? Why would he have to do that? If Tylee was being murdered in his apartment, I mean, all he has to do, I guess he wouldn't want to text Lori like he did about the eggs and things like that. Maybe he wants to, maybe he wants to just get with her face to face, right? Cindy Bullock says, Lori would never tell the truth. Tylee was murdered at Chen's house. You think so, Cindy Bullock? Some of y'all really believe that. What is it? I forgot the name of that fella who said he heard a gunshot. I mean, y'all, your guess is as good as mine. We know what the state's not even really made it very clear. The only thing they've really discussed is the alteration, destruction, and concealment of evidence. I guess they're leaving it in the jury's hands on because they never flesh that out, y'all. If you go back to Lori's trial, they never flesh out exactly where Tylee was. They did say something to the effect of, the hair in the tape of Lori's that was with JJ. This could have been from her own home or something like that. But we never really got that, did we? We never got the state's theory on where Tylee was. Liza Joe says, I agree, Tylee was murdered outside and not inside. Again, y'all, I did the Google Maps on it and stuff. When they come back from Yellowstone, there's not enough time from where they've got the pings on everything for them to stop off at Chad's and then go back to Lori's, where Alex leaves and goes to the store and all that stuff. She was home September 8th in the evening, overnight. These are just my views. From the evidence that I see, she was home. My theory is that she absolutely was murdered in Lori's apartment and not Alex's. And the reason I say this is because I just don't see, I mean, of course you can come up with all kinds of scenarios that maybe Lori sent Tylee over to Alex's apartment, but let's just be clear. When they got back, they went to, all of them were at Lori's apartment, and then Alex left for 10 minutes to go to the Maverick store, and he came back. It seems like everything was at Lori's apartment, and then Alex went back to his apartment. He would have had to have Tylee go with him. And does anyone believe that Tylee doesn't know that Alex's apartment has absolutely no, furnishings in it? Remember that? There was nothing really in there. Why would she even go over there? She would have to go over there. Could Lori have drugged Tylee and then brought her out through her garage? Remember when Wayne and I were in Idaho, We went to those exact apartments, opened up the garage. I mean, the garage doors on some of the units were open and all that. Could she have drugged Tylee, put her in a vehicle, took her over to Alex's? Alex could have brought her over there, went into his garage, and went into his unit. What did they find in Alex Cox's 107 unit? There was nothing said, y'all, forensically, other than the hair on the tape in Lori's trial of any DNA, blood evidence, or anything in either one of those apartments. Cindy Arnold says, well, didn't Tylee stay at Alex's place when Lori was gone? You know, I don't know. I mean, do you see evidence of that Tylee was over at Alex's apartment? I don't see any evidence of that at all. And really, let's just stop for a minute, because many of y'all have brought this up. I don't recall where that was brought out in the evidence, but Tylee had a cell phone too. And some of y'all said that Lori took Tylee's cell phone away from her. But just remember this. Remember, she texted Kobe, was it September 5th or 6th, and said, no, Mama's got control of the money now. Remember that? So she still had her phone. But we saw no evidence of any data points for Tylee Ryan's phone. Cindy Bullock is pretty headstrong on this, that Lori and Alex killed Tylee at Chen's. Well, where does that leave Chad Daybell? Chad Daybell just cleaned up after him? That Chad Daybell didn't actually do any of it? Now, I could see if Tylee was shot and killed and then they had to do what they had to do to her to get rid of the evidence and all that, but because Alex was all about guns. But we heard no evidence, any ballistic from a pathologist or anything else, that they found that there was any gunshot residue or any gunshot holes or anything with Tylee's remains. Some of y'all said Tylee was shot out at Chad's. Well, the state had no evidence of that, y'all. The state didn't have evidence of anything having to do with Tylee. She was so destroyed. So, unless there's evidence presented, ballistic evidence or something like that, how can you take that leap into she was shot out at Chad's? You see, you know, it's a good theory. It's a good theory that she was, if you take into consideration that fella that said he heard a gunshot that day. But then again, what are we talking about here? We're talking about, let's see it through. They get home from Yellowstone overnight. Alex just weirdly goes over there in the middle of the night. The next day, he's out on Chad's property. Tylee gets up in the morning on the 9th, and Alex says, hey, let's go out to Chad's. We all know, y'all, that Tylee did not like Chad Daybell. Why would she want to go out there with Alex? What would be the reason? But then again, there is evidence out there that Alex was good about leaving his phone at Lori's or at his own apartment. Maybe it was Lori that took Tylee out to Chad's. And then the deed was done and she went back to her apartment. I mean, just because the phones weren't there doesn't mean they weren't there. Right, Maria P. That's evidence that we do know about from Lori's trial, that Chad's shed tools had Tylee's blood on them. Again, remember the initial charge of Chad Daybell. Alteration, destruction, and concealment of evidence. They dropped those charges, and I was very upset about that because somebody needs to be charged with that. But I guess their reasoning is first-degree murder and conspiracy to murder is just, you know, way more important and can do more damage penalty-wise to them. Teresa says, I just can't figure out why he would have fired a gun, the reason he sent the raccoon text. Well, you know what? Thinking about that, Teresa, maybe he shot the gun and not called, but texted Tammy that to make it look, like he had done that. I don't think these killer monsters used any drugs to beat and murder zombies. Remember, the kids were possessed and the zombies had to die. Okay, so Liza Joe does not think that there was any kind of eggs used. Excuse me. Excuse me. Me and my running my mouth. We will probably never know if she was shot, but I think she was deceased before she was taken to Chud's to be destroyed and buried, says Fancy Nancy. That's where I'm kind of at. That's where I'm at right now on that. Because, first of all, there's no way after Yellowstone they stopped off at Chad's. They just didn't. But once they got back to the apartments, they could have left their cell phones and took Tylee out that night. Maybe they didn't drug her. Maybe they could have done anything to her to murder her. And then overnight, I don't know. I mean, it's just a lot of information to have to really go through. That's exactly why I'm going to be doing these pre-records, because when we are faced with the evidence that we saw in Lori's trial, then we can look and we can say, all right, this is what was said in testimony. There's a question after that. Let's look at other evidence and apply that to it and see if we can come up with answers. Teresa, the reason that Chad Daybell, this is just my opinion, that he sent the raccoon text is because Tammy was going to come home that evening. And whether or not she looked out in the backyard or not, there was a disturbance on the ground. And Chad had to account for that. Judy Burgess thinks that Tylee was killed on the way back from Yellowstone and did the rest at Chad's. Well, Judy, just remember this. JJ was there too. Would they have done this while JJ was sleeping on the way back? Could they have done this? And I just don't see them doing it. And then JJ get back in the vehicle to go home. They stop at Buckaroo Barbecue, go home and stuff without, where's Tylee? Or, I guess a shot in the dark would be they killed her, suffocated her, strangled her, or whatever, and then told JJ she was asleep. I mean, there are all kinds of ways you could kind of look at that. But then again, y'all, Chad just filed not even 3 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, an amended notice of alibi. And he's shit out of luck, because no matter what he says, if you look at the evidence of his involvement, the morning of Alex calling Chad and all this and that and going out to Chad's and stuff, you would have to believe that Alex and Lori wanted to frame Chad Daybell. Lori was going to protect Chad. So why would she even? It was Chad's idea, in my view, to put the children back there. Not Lori's idea, not Alex's idea. It was Chad Daybell. Chad Daybell also, if you think about the mechanics of what it takes to get into digging a grave and getting the roots out and everything of that tree, having to clip those off and do everything the way he did, the paneling, the rocks, and all that. His alibi cannot be anything like, I had no idea. I had stated in the past, maybe Chad would come out and say, Alex and Lori did this. And, I was just so scared to death about, because I was involved with Lori and it looked so bad. I just helped them cover it up, and I didn't murder anybody. But he can't do that now. The reason he can't do that now is because how could he in a tunnel be charged with the first-degree murder of Tammy and has nothing at all to do with the murder of those children? You'd have to believe that Chad Daybell didn't know nothing about the murders of the kids, but just decided to murder his wife. And I mean, I can't see it any other way. Aquamoon says, I'm afraid she was alive going to Chad's. Her deceased body would be very heavy and difficult for Alex and Lori. Well, this also goes back, good point, Aquamoon. This goes back to, what they did to her. They realized, Alex was out there 2.5 hours. Chad was there. The bottom line is they realized how hard it was to do that. And so they were going to do a different plan on JJ. Pure and simple. They were going to do something different. And of course they were going to dress it up. When you think about it, you think about the time frame of Melanie Gibb and Lori's podcast about, I don't know if it was Feel the Fire or something to that effect. It was getting them ready to burn Tylee. But they had to dress it up differently about JJ. And that's where those cords, the cord needed to be unraveled, says Zulema on the stand at Lori's trial. Things of that sort. They absolutely, at every turn of this murder spree, they had to dress it up with some kind of bullshit coming from Chad that would appease Lori so they could, ease their own consciences and continue the freaked out role-playing stuff. Teresa, you're correct. Lori asked neighbor if they had heard noise the night before, a possible struggle. Yes, there was some evidentiary stuff that wasn't brought out in Lori's trial. Again, we've gotten into so much information that a lot of us were kind of scratching our head. Why wasn't it brought out in Lori's trial? Maybe the state thought, that's just a little tidbit. We've got enough and all this and that. What I'm trying to say is this. Melanie Gibbs' last police interview, all that stuff that she talked about, every bit of it. Did the state go through this meticulously with Melanie Gibb while she was on the stand about the weekend her and David Warwick was there? They did little sprigs of it, but they didn't bring up the things that we all knew when Melanie Gibb talks about, Lori and Chad and Alex and her and David Warwick were all on that piece of property that Sunday and all that. None of that was ever talked about. None of that was. And there were so many things that were crucial. But when you speak of Lori talking about that, it was not brought out in Lori's trial where she says we were doing karaoke and all this and that, which is a good hypothesis that they were getting loud, which if that's the case, and that's actually what happened, then how could Tylee have been drugged? If she'd been drugged, she wouldn't have been making a bunch of racket, right? So that lends it to that anyway. Maria P., Lori says that in terms of JJ, it was Melanie Gibb, David Warwick, and Chad Daybell. Now, I'm going to answer your question, but now you got me going down this thing. We know Chad visited the weekend of JJ. But if Chad Daybell was not there when Alex and Lori killed JJ, right? Why even include his name? Why couldn't she just have said, it was me, Alex, it was Melanie Gibb and David Warwick. If Chad was nowhere at all during the weekend in terms of the murder, not about visiting Lori so he could take her off in another room and play with her titties, whatever. The bottom line is that she absolutely puts Chad Daybell with her. And if you want to look at it, y'all, Lori's alibi that includes Chad Daybell. What is Chad Daybell's amended alibi about where Lori was? Could Chad Daybell say in his amended alibi that Alex came over to his house, since we know for a fact Alex was down the street the night of Tammy's murder? Could his notice of alibi just say, I was with my kids and my wife? You know, we already know that the jury believes that Tammy was murdered. So Chad Daybell's argument that she was not murdered isn't going to fly when you take into totality everything that was said and done. I mean, for goodness sake, y'all, you don't just say Tammy is Viola and all that, but yet they're saying Tylee is Hillary and JJ is this or that, or you know what I'm saying? Well, Norma Guerrero, I brought it up time and time again. Why hasn't Chad and Lori divorced? You know, they're sick. They're sick, twisted people. That's what they are. This whole thing about a spouse shouldn't be able to testify against, that doesn't apply in Idaho. And it doesn't apply in Arizona. Sandra Lavallee says, good morning. Chad Daybell was there the whole time, but he's going to blame it on Alex and Aunt Lori. Okay, well, then you would have to believe, Sandra, that sometime September 8th, when they got back from Yellowstone, that Chad came over the house overnight or came over the next morning. No one's very clear when Tylee was actually murdered. There is no evidence that we know how that happened. Now, if you want to say that they took Tylee out there alive or drugged or whatever, and Chad was there on his property, that seems a little more reasonable because his amended alibi is absolutely going to have, where was I on the September 8th and 9th? And how is he going to be able to prove that? The only evidence that he could really give would be, look, here's my cell phone. I wasn't over at Lori's apartment during September 8th and 9th. And to top it all off, what if he has his children saying, Dad was home September 8th and 9th? You see what I'm saying? I mean, even if they're lying, the bottom line is it doesn't matter because Lori was all the way in Hawaii. And she still got convicted of conspiracy to commit murder on Tammy Daybell. You don't have to actually be there in order to have conspiracy to murder charges on you. I mean, conspiracy can include text messages, a criminal intent of understanding that can be bared out in the testimony or in evidence. I believe it, Cindy. I believe his kids would probably have to stretch the truth or lie. I mean, my goodness, y'all. Emma has made it very clear that this is all Lori. She came out on that Dateline or whatever and said if Lori would have never been there, none of this would have ever happened. I disagree, though. I think at some point, Chad Daybell had to prove to everyone he'd been telling, Tammy's going to die, Tammy's going to die, Tammy's going to die. He's been saying that since 2015. And you can't have people in that weirded out situation believe you about your seeing beyond the veil shit or revelation or anything about other things if you can't even get them to see that what you've been talking about your wife dying isn't coming to fruition. So he was going to eventually have to murder her if she didn't die on her own. And that is such a lazy. Isn't that lazy to say, I've got these seeing beyond the veil type of revelations and visions about my wife dying. By God, folks, everybody's going to freaking die. That's so lazy. What, that's supposed to let people think that you know something because your spouse dies after you've been talking about it since 2015? He'd have been talking about it until 2030 or 2040 until she did die. And then he'd say, see, she died just as I've been telling everybody for 20 years. Give me a break. Sandra Lavallee thinks that Chad came over the house that night. Are you talking about Tylee, right? Or could you be talking about JJ or both? Again, y'all, Chad Daybell's amended notice of alibi. John Pryor is absolutely, he turned that in knowing that he has something to line up with that notice of alibi. Did Archie effectively incorporate in Lori's trial when she says where she was at, and I believe the Chad Daybell, Melanie Gibb, and David Warwick was specifically about JJ. I don't think that it was that Tylee. I just don't see that Melanie Gibb, David Warwick, and Chad were there when Tylee was murdered. If you read it like it is, you would think that's what she's saying. But they can prove, David Warwick can prove it, Melanie Gibb can prove it, can Chad Daybell prove it? Nothing came out in that trial that, hey, we've got evidence here that on September 8th and 9th, Melanie Gibb and David Warwick was over at Lori's apartment. Or Chad Daybell, for that matter. Good morning, Curly Shirley. Yes, Curly Shirley, we are going to have to watch John Pryor and Chad like hawks. Y'all, OKJ is going to look at what we know so far, whether it's through Lori's trial, whether it's any kind of the evidence that we see, to kind of veer into what Chad Daybell has said into his amended notice of alibi. I understand it's just theory and hypothesis, but isn't it going to be interesting when John Pryor puts on his defense that he brings out some of the things that we figure out through justice through understanding, right? It took Chad 20 years to find an idiot to fall for him. Then he murdered Tammy. Meanwhile, Tammy did all the work, says Maria P. Exactly. Exactly. Liza Joe says, if Mormons lie, they go to hell. Chad will manipulate his kids to remember things his way. Ann Gibson says, I think Lori drugged Tylee. I think Alex murdered her. I think they both moved her to Chad's, and then him and Alex did the rest to Tylee. Well, that's as good a theory as any, Ann Gibson. I myself do not believe they murdered her out there at Chad's. I think she was already dead before she left the apartment complex. Whether that was in Alex's apartment or Lori's apartment, I think it was Lori's apartment. And I think they were able to put her in the garage where no one could see inside the vehicle, and they took her out to maybe, they could have drugged her and put her in the garage at Lori's, took her out, brought her over to Alex's. He's in his garage. He comes through the door with her, drugged, and does the rest. Liza Joe says Chad's trial. When is Chad's trial? Fancy Nancy says April 1st. It is heartbreaking. 1979 ACR. Chad Daybell, y'all, he fits every criteria of being given the death penalty. Pure and simple. Every criteria. And I think the state hit a slam dunk in that it's not just about conspiracy, because remember this, y'all. Did Lori have an actual first-degree murder? Did Lori, was the state actually saying she did the work? No. But with that being said, because she was charged with conspiracy to commit murder, she got the first-degree murder charge. Get it? Well, Chad actually committed that murder of Tammy. And even if nothing else had happened, if the state proves that Chad Daybell murdered Tammy Daybell, that is death penalty qualification. When you take in the aggravating factors, according to Idaho law, of, egregious, for money, all these different factors, he checks every damn one of them. I think Chad Daybell and Gibson probably did the heavy lifting on a lot of that dismemberment. That's what I think. I think Alex murdered Tylee and Chad helped clean it up. But I also believe Tylee was murdered because Chad and Lori both, even Stephen, wanted her murdered. So anyway, I am going to be working on this amended notice of alibi, looking at the time frames of all of this. And yes, we understand, all of us understand what the state has in terms of GPS coordinates and everything, and what they think happened when Tylee left Yellowstone, went home, Alex going to the Maverick, yada, yada, yada. We all understand that. What it really comes down to is looking and seeing where Chad could and should have been at that time. For instance, example, September 8th and 9th, was that a weekday? We know Tammy was still alive, right? Just things of that sort fleshed out. Cindy Arnold, a lot of people have asked that question. Did Chad and Tammy's kids know that she was going to die? Well, of course, we all know that our parents are going to die at some point. So, but I know what you're saying. You're saying, did Chad let the kids know, I've seen this revelation that your mom's going to die and all that? Did Chad tell Tammy this? We will never know. I mean, unless the state can bring it out, if they're witnesses, that Chad was telling the kids this. And, you know, the kids, I just don't see, and y'all might disagree with this, if John Pryor, say he uses the kids as Chad's alibi and he brings them up on the stand, or if the state subpoenas the kids and puts them on the stand, I do not see them lying through their teeth, y'all. I just don't. I think they'll try to distance their dad as much as they can, but I just don't think those kids would lie through their teeth, knowing in their heart of hearts what's coming out of their mouth is a bald-faced lie. I just don't believe it. And Gibson says, we'll find out April 1st. Donna Donald says, teens learn a little and think they know everything. Of course, my granddaughter is above average smart. That is even more annoying to some. That's cute, Donna Donald. You're right. My boys, when they were teenagers, they thought they knew it all. Boy, were they in for a shocker. So anyway, y'all, I hope everyone has a great day. I am going to be shooting some pre-records for the days that we're not together with coffee. And I hope y'all will leave your comments. I'm putting on the community wall. All right? Now hear me out, y'all. The Rays have helped me for 4 years with content. I do care what you have to say. I'm going to put a community post on the wall, and I'm going to ask a couple of questions, and I want you to really think about it. For some that already have their research, that's one thing, but for others who feel like they've kind of gotten it together on what they think and all that, I want these questions answered so that I can incorporate them in my pre-records. It can't be just what I have to say and what I'm putting out there. It has to be what we have to say. That's always been the important thing on this channel. So I love you all. Be looking for that community post. We'll get back together. Be thinking about that. What could Chad Daybell possibly say in an amended alibi? And really, ultimately, what's different about it and the original one that he released in the file with John Pryor at the beginning of 2023? What's different? There's one thing different. Lori's trial happened in between it, and John Pryor has to adjust. Don't y'all know? I love you all. Have a great Monday. Leave your comments. Be looking for those pre-records, and keep on looking.